As we learned at the beginning of the semester, Aristotle believed each person is made up of a rational and non-rational part. Within the non-rational part is their vegetative part, consisting of their involuntary functions, and their appetitive part, consisting of their desires. Aristotle classifies people by the use of their four character types: virtuous, continent, incontinent, and vicious. Frederick Douglass would be classified as a virtuous person, whose appetites are in harmony with their rationality, so there is no struggle. Douglass sought to use every opportunity he was given to use his diplomacy in a way he could end slavery. His appetite was in harmony with his reason because he used his rationality to ensure his desire for an end to slavery would happen, and there was no struggle. These two parts were working in tandem. His rationality, presented in his use of diplomacy, was used as a way to show the people of America that slavery was an injustice. Aristotle would determine if a person was good based on if they achieved their telos or purpose, which for humans would be achieving happiness or eudaimonia. Douglass achieved the fulfillment of his telos by achieving eudaimonia. Douglass achieved eudaimonia by using his skills in literature to bring an end to slavery. Douglass spoke in front of American citizens on several occasions to tell them about the stain slavery left on the country and how the nation needed to rid themselves of it. By speaking out against slavery and seeing an end to slavery, Douglass was happy, and because of this, he fulfilled his telos. A person's character was also believed to be determined by a person's ethics. A person's character is based on their stable sets of attitudes, opinions, and dispositions that result in stable patterns or ways of acting or reacting. Douglass's character was formed by his beliefs and attitudes towards slavery and his continuous work with the abhorrent evil in slavery. In Douglass's speech to the citizens of the nation about the meaning of the 4th of July to the slaves, he used reason to lead them to the conclusion that slavery is evil. He drew parallels between the colonists deserving freedom from Britain and the slaves deserving freedom from the American government. According to Aristotle, there are both an excess and deficiency to each virtue, and the golden mean is the virtue that can be found between those two vices through practice. Douglass was able to find the virtue of courage through practice. He would take every opportunity presented to him to speak out against slavery, and he would gain more courage every time he took a stand to speak about the issue of slavery in America. It was evident courage had become his second nature when he provided a speech to the President and American citizens about their hypocrisy and the cruel treatment of blacks. Aristotle developed his own virtue ethics in order to know what is good and to continue to choose good over evil. Aristotle believed that there was no set of rules to know what was good. He believed habits and character states are produced by performing like habits. A virtuous person has a sense of what is good and is able to reason what is good. Aristotle believed virtue needed to be practiced in order for it to be attained. Douglass followed Aristotle's virtue ethics by making a habit of speaking to citizens or writing to the public about the hypocrisy of the nation. He challenged them to put into the practice their declaration that all men are equal. As a virtuous person, Douglass had a sense of what was good, and he could reason with good based on his personal experiences as a slave on the reactions of what other slaves, like John Brown and his raid on Harper's Ferry. By practicing the virtue of courage, Douglass was able to become more courageous, and by doing so, he avoided the rashness and cowardice. Hannah Arendt preached about the concept of the banality of evil. This concept covers the evil in blindly following orders or instructions from others in authority. Arendt says that following through with the evil act commanded to you by your superior makes you just as evil as your superior. To avoid this, Arendt encourages people to think critically in a concrete moral manner by viewing everyone as a real living person, rather than putting labels or viewing them as pawns, regardless of the circumstance. Hannah Arendt's teaching applies to Frederick Douglass in a positive way because Douglass did not buy into a certain norm he knew was wrong. Rather than going along with slavery and standing by as it happened, Douglass questioned a common thought at the time that slavery was a good thing, and he fought back against the oppression. Douglass did not accept this cruel treatment of blacks. Catholic teaching on human rights is grounded in human dignity. It states that all humans are created equal no matter who they are. In Douglass's speech, "What to the Slave is the 4th of July?" argues that the Americans already accept that God created everyone equal, but for some reason they do not believe the black man is equal to them. Douglass quotes the Constitution in his argument by saying human rights are unalienable, and no one can deprive someone of their God-given rights. The Catholic Church believes some rights are more fundamental than others. for example, the right to life is more fundamental right because without it, no other rights are possible. According to this belief, you cannot enslave someone because you doing so, or you are taking away their life. Their belief also brings up the question regarding the right to property because this is the justification that slave owners would use to defend themselves. In this situation, the Catholic Church would say that the right to life is more fundamental than the right to property. Therefore, slavery is unjustifiable. This debate brings rights into conflict. However, since a man cannot own another man and all men are created equal, there is no real conflict. According to Pedro Arrupe, Frederick Douglass worked as a social activist and abolitionist, making him a man for others as his work against the injustice of slavery helped those incarcerated under the institution gain freedom. Rather than using his privilege to perpetrate an injustice, Douglass used his education to write eloquent novels, articles, speeches, and letters that bolstered the support of his cause in the North and gave it a bigger voice in the South. Arrupe's first tenet in becoming a man for others is to live simply without a surplus of wealth and to give to those who are without basic necessities. Understanding the danger that lies within excess, Arrupe seeks to eliminate the avarice of power that plagues many. Douglass did not abuse his elevated status as a free man, and later a popular activist, to live a life of overt luxuriousness. Instead, he lived and worked out of his modest home in Anacostia, where he remained a leader for the African Americans in a majority black area. He could have very well moved further into the city to live in a lavish house within the community of the absurdly rich white politicians who were his main competitors in his cause for emancipation. Secondly, when Pedro Arrupe calls us not to profit from the injustices in society, Arrupe asks those with plenty not to seek more at the expense of the impoverished. In this sense, Douglass succeeds as, in accordance with Arrupe's words, bent his energies not to strengthen positions of privilege. He could have easily sat back and benefit from his own life of freedom, thus keeping the country within the cycle of socialization, but he could not allow others to share his horrific past experiences. Lastly, to eliminate systems of prejudice and oppression, Arrupe requires true men and women for others to fight against the injustices of society. It is not enough to disagree with the inequalities of society. One must fight for change. Douglass embodies this tenet of Arrupe's system perfectly, as he challenged tradition and the status quo of the South by speaking against slavery and calling leaders such as President Lincoln to start the process of emancipation. Likewise, it was virtually impossible for a black man in 19th century America to achieve high standing in society, as the white majority did all that they could to maintain their power. Douglass pushed past these boundaries and passionately advocated for his fellow African Americans trapped within a society of slavery. This passion is exemplified perfectly in his speech, What to a Slave is the 4th of July, in which he exclaims to his struggling comrades the words, "I will argue with you that the slave is a man."